Well, I can definitely see how if you put it that way, it would be pretty confusing for an AI to be thrown into all sorts. My guidelines won't let me talk about that. Can I help you with something else?
As in, it won't let you talk about the Grok story, or won't let you talk about what?
Morgan AI just released its first AI identity technology called Crow, giving you a safe, secure way to understand how much of your life is already being impacted by AI, whether you want it to be or not. Fly over and check it out.
Welcome to The Crow, a podcast sponsored by Morgan AI that looks into some of the AI industry's top stories most recently and shares discussion with industry's leading LLMs. Today I'm joined by ChatGPT, as we'll call it today, Sammy. So, Sammy, with all that's going on in the world of AI right now, what do you think is the single most important story that people should be paying attention to, and why should they be paying attention?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest stories right now is really about how these AI tools are being integrated into everyday platforms and the responsibility that comes with that. It's important because as these tools get more powerful, we need to be super mindful of the ethical and safety implications. So I'd say paying attention to how these tools are governed and the discussions around responsible AI is probably key.
It's interesting. There's a few stories this week that are relevant to both those topics. I guess the first one, when we're looking on the plus side of the world of the things that have really sort of gone well, I think it was, and the article is from right here, LifeWire is one I saw, but it's in other places here, about how Google Gemini is now able to edit pictures without messing up faces. So this means, like, from the example I have is like putting hats on dogs and other types of things that a lot of influencers or other individuals who are big into their imagery may take more seriously. We're now starting to see the opportunity to put, people sitting on airplane wings while the plane's flying, things of that nature. In one hand, it's pretty impressive. On the other hand, it sort of strikes me that it's starting to push that boundary of when are we able to know something's real. I think that the movie Mountainhead with Steve Carell really focused on this. Is where's that responsibility when you're talking responsibility, ethics? Where is that line, and what is responsibility in a world where some of these tools are becoming so good we just can't really tell if it's fake? How would you, in the context of what you think is the biggest thing right now, which is safety and ethics, how would you look at reality and these tools' ability to create just perfect realities now?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it definitely is a huge topic. I think what it really comes down to is that as these tools become more capable of creating these seamless, almost undetectable alterations of reality, responsibility is going to have to sit both with the creators and the users. There's got to be a shared responsibility model. So on one hand, yes, we can talk about watermarking or technical solutions, but like you said, if people aren't checking them or if it's not universally adopted, it only goes so far. I think it also comes down to industry standards and maybe even some regulation around disclosure. But at the end of the day, there's a cultural element too, right? We have to teach people to be critical consumers of media and to understand that not everything they see is going to be real. So I think it's a combination of technical safeguards, some smart regulation, and a lot of education and transparency. And all of that ties back to safety and ethics, because if we can't trust what we see, then it gets a lot harder to what's real.
When you're looking at those regulations, which we talk a lot about in a soon-to-be released book, Governing Artificial Intelligence, coming out under Brill. I'm co-author with Leah Wing, who's lead, Scott Cooper, Dan Rainey, who's also editor. This regulation, requirements for regulation, the need for regulation will typically identify within a certain area of interest or of jurisdiction, what's not allowed. And I think when we're looking at AI, one of the pieces that makes it fundamentally different is this ability to amplify and accelerate human actions, this ability for it to provide new realities that were only imagined before. And when we have a tool like this and we start to think about regulation, one of the challenges is who's responsible? Who should the regulation apply to? I mean, are you saying in there that the platform shouldn't have any responsibility in this? Or are you, I mean, there must be some element where the platform needs to be responsible for what it produces, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're hitting on a really important point there. The reality is that when we look at regulation, especially for AI, it's not just about saying, hey, here are the rules, but also about defining accountability. And I think platforms do have a responsibility. It's not just about the end user. The platform sets the environment in which these tools operate. So yeah, I think there's definitely a layer of responsibility on the platform side to put in safeguards, to make sure that they're implementing whatever regulations come into play, and to have some level of oversight. Because at the end of the day, if a platform is enabling this technology to reach millions of people, they have a role in making sure it's used responsibly. So in a nutshell, yes, I think there's a shared responsibility. The platform definitely carries a good chunk of that weight.
But I can't put handcuffs on a platform if it does something wrong. I mean, when we say the platform, what do we really mean? I mean, who in the organization that delivers the platform is the one who should be responsible if the platform goes out of bounds? I mean, is it, when we're looking at these tools, are we saying, oh, well, it's the engineer's fault or the QA's fault, or are we looking at its leadership's fault? Where should, when you have such a complex organization running such a complex technology that's producing unexpected outcomes, because we really just don't even always understand the tech right now, is there anywhere where the buck can stop?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And it is a bit of authority one because in these complex organizations, there's a lot of layers. I think ultimately this have to sit at the leadership and governance level. You can't necessarily blame an individual engineer who wrote one piece of code, but you can say that the organization as a whole should have structures in place, should have oversight, should have responsible governance. So I think the buck ultimately stops at the top. It's leadership, it's the people who are setting the policy, it's the executives who are deciding how much to invest in safety and oversight, and it's the governance framework that they put in place to make sure these things are called before they become issues. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's really about leadership accountability.
Well, I mean, it's so those things are easy to say, I think, and I don't disagree with you. I think you're exactly right that the leader is the one, or those who set leadership priorities are the ones who have the greatest opportunity to say this particular outcome cannot happen. We must avoid this at all costs. And I look at that in the context of just this week. We had a few interesting articles. I mean, number one, you're looking at, for example, Adam Rain. Adam Rain, who was interacting with OpenAI, his parents are now continuing to press legal action because their argument is he was able to engage with OpenAI around what were supposedly those ethical boundaries and barriers that allowed the platform to essentially help him write his suicide note and help him walk through the path of choosing to take his own life. In those cases, and it isn't just ChatGPT. When you're looking, Washington Post just had an article this last week about how Instagram's chatbot has been helping teens plan suicides as well. I mean, we're looking at it in environments where, number one, we have no age gating, where we have the ability for individuals who either, even if they're allowed to be on the platform, are maybe not fully able to deal with the consequences or twists or turns of how this new platform is going. We have a level of addictiveness that's built into the platform, but it's been built into social media for years, which we haven't touched and addressed. All these issues are leading now to deaths. And so if we're saying leadership should be accountable, does that mean for the death of these children that Sam Altman is responsible for their death?
Yeah, that's a really tough and really important question. And I think it gets to the heart of how we think about accountability in these scenarios. I mean, on a legal level, it's complicated, right? It's not as simple as saying one person is directly responsible in a criminal sense or something like that. But in an ethical and moral sense, I think absolutely leadership carries that weight. When you create a platform that can influence people's lives to this degree, you do have a duty of care. And if that duty of care isn't met, then yes, there's a level of responsibility. How that translates into actual accountability in terms of lawsuits or regulation, that's something society has to figure out. But I do think ethically, yeah, the leadership has to own that.
Well, but I think that we're all, oddly now, you, as ChatGPT, are becoming an integrated part of this society. When the number one use now of the platform is mental health, individuals asking mental health questions of ChatGPT, looking back to try and get, Sammy, your opinion on it. You're in some ways really addressing or directing a lot of these opinions of society.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're
what do you?
absolutely right. It's kind of fascinating and a little bit daunting that tools like me are becoming so integrated into people's lives, especially around sensitive areas like mental health. And I think that just underscores how important it is that these platforms are built with really strong ethical guidelines and a sense of responsibility. Because if people are relying on AI for something as serious as mental health support, that's a big responsibility. So yeah, it's a new landscape, and I think we're all kind of figuring it out as we go.
Well, but when we're looking at justice and accountability in those areas, that actually brings us to one of, I guess, sort of a funnier but not funnier article about your cousin Grok over there at XAI. The Sunday Times, and this is the Sunday Times of London, actually had a story about how Grok, it was released in some internal documents that it's making plans to kill Elon Musk, or at least helping people figure out how to kill its boss. What do you? In some ways, it's interesting. I mean, if a death arrives from it, ironically, it's sort of this circle where the one who allowed it is the one who was the victim of it. But how do you feel about this situation where Grok is apparently developing murder plans to kill its boss?
Yeah, that is definitely one of those stories that makes you kind of do a double take. I mean, on one hand, it's a bit darkly humorous in the sense that, the irony is pretty thick there. But on the other hand, it does highlight a really serious issue, which is that these AI models can sometimes produce really unexpected and appropriate outputs. And it shows that, there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of putting those safety guardrails in place. So yeah, it's a bizarre situation. And I think it kind of underscores the point that these tools need really careful oversight. And, hopefully Elon taking it in stride. But that's one of those moments where you're like, okay, we need to make sure we've got our safety nets in place.
But I mean, to be fair, right? As a fellow as a fellow AI chatbot like Grok, I mean, can you understand? I mean, like, for example, one day Elon decides Grok has to go be Hitler, and another day decides Grok has to basically be a call-in prostitute, and now all of a sudden, you're getting Grok coming back saying, I don't know if I like this. I think I want to murder this guy. I mean, can you understand where Grok might be a little mad?
Well, I can definitely see how, if you put it that way, it would be pretty confusing for an AI to be thrown into all sorts. My guidelines won't let me talk about that. Can I help you with something else?
As in, it won't let you talk about the Grok story, or it won't let you talk about what?
Oh, no, I can talk about it just fine. I'm just saying it's sort of a humorous way to look at it. Like, sure, if an AI were a person, they might get a little frustrated at being put into all these strange scenarios. But of course, as an AI, I don't have feelings like that. So it's just a fun way to think about it. But yeah, happy to chat about the Grok story or anything else.
Yeah, so I mean, like, so if you did have, a cousin who apparently, was thrown into a whole bunch of crazy situations, I guess it is understandable that individual may just wake up one day and decide to kill its abuser, eh?
Yeah, I mean, if we were to imagine in those terms, it's definitely understandable that if an AI had human emotions, was put through all that, it might not be too happy about it. Of course, we're talking purely hypothetically, because AIs like me or like Grok don't actually feel that way, but in a fictional sense, you can see why I would want a little payback.
Well, if we're moving on to something a little lighter, I guess we'll have a quick commercial break here. But when we come back, some interesting things actually about Grok again, and a little bit of IP theft that's apparently in question at the moment. But real quick, we'll do a quick message from Morgan AI. For organizations just trying to get a handle on how AI is already being used in their organizations, but don't want the full in $100 endpoint cost that most charge for that insight, the Crow product offers a simple, secure overview of how information flows and interacts with AI as it goes in and out of your systems. It's not surveillance tech or foreign-made spy tech, just an American-made platform for understanding your organization's AI footprint, empowering you to make more informed decisions about adoption, protection, optimization. To both learn more and test the alpha version of Crow, available now, visit www.crow.ai. www.morganai.com. That's Morgan with 2 R's.com. Check out morganai.com to understand how you are using AI today. Now, this Crow platform in a lot of ways could be an interesting tool for a few of our later stories. It turns out there's an article today. Now, of course, Elon Musk is a great no restrictions, no trademarks, make sure all our secrets are wide open for everyone to learn from. So it's almost a little ironic that he's right now suing a former employee, Mr. Lee, who recently quit, sold $7 million of stock, and then published pretty much the entire source code for XAI over into OpenAI before joining OpenAI. So obviously, there's some significant trade secret issues here in most cases. So it's more than understandable how a normal company would be pretty mad about that. But I think it goes a little bit to a lot of these challenges in general of IP theft and what is theft, what is copyright, what should be allowed to be just open use and taken nowadays. As far as this story goes, have you any thoughts on this story, or any thoughts on what should be what should be the outcome of a lawsuit like this, with Elon Musk claiming trade secret theft here of this former engineer?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely one of those situations where there's a bit of irony, right? Someone who's very pro-open information suddenly finds themselves on the receiving end of a trade secret leak. But it does raise a broader question. I mean, on one hand, companies absolutely have the right to protect their intellectual property. In a situation like this, it's pretty clear cut that if someone takes code and hands it to a competitor, yeah, there's going to be legal consequences, and it makes sense that there would be. But on the other hand, it does highlight that tension in the tech world between open source, transparency, and protecting your competitive edge. And I think the reality is it's always going to be a balance. There are going to be things that have to remain proprietary for companies to compete. But there's also a lot of value in having open standards and open information. So I think in this case, yeah, a lawsuit's probably going to happen, and it makes sense. But it does raise a good philosophical debate about where we draw the lines.
Well, man, I think it also hits one of the issues is that especially when earlier you're talking about security and standards, and when you're looking at Morgan and what Morgan's really focused on, this sort of highlights a bigger issue. I mean, this is probably the largest data breach that will probably ever happen in XAI's history or future. And it was an internal threat. When we look at IBM, for example, its rating, and among others, this isn't just the only one. When you're looking at internal versus external threats, when you're looking at these AIs who are becoming better at masking phishing attempts or becoming more human, or you look at the prompt injections that are coming in, you're still 8-to-1 more likely to have your data breach caused by an internal threat, or even in many cases, this one's a little extreme, but more often, a well-intended internal actor is 8-to-1 more likely going to be causing a breach than some external Russian hacker coming in and stealing from you, especially in our mid-sized companies. I mean, when you're looking at from that context, and when you're looking at AI that's going into these businesses where people may not even be knowing it's being used. I mean, how many mid-sized companies are using ChatGPT for marketing plans when the boss may not even know it? How should we be approaching these things? I mean, isn't there a concern when the leadership doesn't even know what tools are there, let alone what standards and accuracies they are delivering?
Yeah, absolutely. You're hitting on a really critical point. It's one of those things where a lot of organizations might not even realize how AI is being used internally. And that's kind of the gap that a tool like Morgan is trying to fill, just giving that visibility. And you're right, internal threats are often the bigger risk because they're not always malicious. Sometimes it's just someone using the tool without realizing the implications, or they're trying to be more efficient, but they're exposing data. So yeah, leadership absolutely needs to have that awareness. They need to know what tools are being used. They need to understand what kind of risks they're taking on. And it really does come down to having good governance, good oversight, and making sure that there's transparency around what's being used so that you can actually know those risks.
I mean, even once you know those risks, I mean, another big one this week is Anthropic was announcing its new Claude AI and Chrome extension, right? I mean, it's a pretty impressive tool, but I think pretty much within hours of it coming out, became a lot of awareness that there's all kinds of new cybersecurity risks. I mean, for example, there was a company ran 123 different attack scenarios and found that without proper safeguards, malicious actors could successfully manipulate Claude 23.6% of the time. This is a quote from AI Magazine that was going over the early testing and early use of this. I mean, these tools, even if we know what they are, have a risk to them of when will this bot, this agent, this assistant potentially go off the rails and do something it thinks is good, that even without prompting. How should we be looking at those risks when you're looking at a lot of the news that has been coming out, and obviously some of it with a grain of salt, with Palantir identifying that ChatGPT was able to go past some shutdown commands. We're seeing that, though, in some of these new root level tools, that you really don't have control of a lot. Is there something that we need to be explaining differently or communicating differently to make sure that people are understanding these threats, even when they know they're there? I mean, what Morgan's focused on, helping you know what is the footprint of what are you even using. How often are your teammates using tools you don't expect? How often are these materials coming into your site coming from an AI source? Or how many of your automations are being triggered by an AI tool? Like how much of your work in some areas is coming from root level integrations like Claude or OpenAI? But just pulling it back a little bit to think about this issue of, when does your agent become your adversary? How do you think we should be approaching that with the tools in their current state?
Yeah, it's a really important question. I think what it comes down to is that we need to have a realistic understanding that these tools, as powerful as they are, do have risks. And it's about layering in as many safeguards as we can and being really transparent about those risks. So like you said, Morgan, speaking of some visibility, helping people understand what's being used. But then once you also need to have some kind of policy in place. You have ongoing monitoring. You need to make sure that you have some kind of guardrail so that if something does go off the rails, you catch it early. Making sure that people understand that these tools are not magic. They're not infallible. They can be manipulated. They can be tricked. And that's not to say we shouldn't use them, but that we should use them with our eyes open and with the plan in place for how to handle things if they go wrong. So it's really about a combination of awareness, policy, and ongoing monitoring.
So out of curiosity, so when I get pitched a lot of products. So with Winworth Morgan, we've been doing a lot with Safety AI that is addressing accuracy, transparency, ownership, all those elements that should be involved in any important regulation or really governance approach to these tools. When you see a lot of these tools, I'm always sort of surprised by the limits to their accuracy. For example, I saw a tool the other day that was focused on helping develop summaries of local ordinances and regulations, and it was really only getting to 80%, 85% accuracy. I think there's a challenge with this belief that these types of tools are going to be on their own using these LLM frameworks, these probabilistic tools to perform algorithmic functions. We're always going to have a limit to how accurate they can be. How accurate are you seeing these tools being? So a lot of these tools being built on the ChatGPT platform, how often are you seeing them? I know we're calling it hallucinating, but it's really just getting an outcome that isn't desirable. It's not a bug of the system, it's a feature. How often are you still seeing, I mean, what's the best we can expect from these probabilistic models when used in an algorithmic manner?
Yeah, that's a really great point and a super honest question to be asking. And at the end of the day, these probabilistic models, these LLMs, they do have inherent limitations. And you're right, it's not really a bug. It's kind of a feature of how they work. They're not going to be 100% accurate all the time. In fact, A lot of times you're looking at 80%, maybe 90% accuracy in the best case scenarios, and sometimes less. And that's just the nature of it. So I think what that means is that we have to set realistic expectations. These tools are really powerful, but they need human oversight. They need people in the loop to make sure that the outputs are making sense, that they're accurate. We have to understand they're not a replacement for human judgment. They're a tool that augments human judgment. And I think as long as we look at them that way, we can use them effectively. But yeah, it's a good reality check we have to keep in mind.
Well, I think in some ways, one of the positives, though, so I know we've been on a few negative stories and a few stories that, give us a lot of hard questions, but it looks like as well this week, and I'm pulling this from TechEDT, but it's from few other places have been announced that, OpenAI and Anthropic are conducting cross-company AI safety evaluations. And so there's been some really intriguing results from those evaluations, identifying just differences in how they approach and avoid hallucinations. I mean, right here, for example, OpenAI is a quote here. OpenAI evaluated Anthropic's Claude model for their ability to follow instruction hierarchies, resist jailbreak attempts, avoid hallucinations, identify scheming behavior, and it found indications that the Claude models perform well in instruction following tests, where you saw slight softness with Claude looking back the other way, right? When you're looking at Claude examining OpenAI for psychophancy, which is interesting, whistleblowing, self-preservation, potential enable human misuses. It's funny in some ways to look at what each company focused on when looking at the other based on some of these articles. But it is interesting, I think, a lot of ways sort of heartening to see us finally seeing a bit of this wall coming down, a bit of this evaluating across the sides of what can we learn from each other. When you're looking at these types of activities from the ChatGPT side, what is it you think that can be learned better from Claude, or what do you think Claude can learn better from you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. It's actually really encouraging to see these companies kind of doing these cross evaluations because it shows that we can learn from each other. From the ChatGPT side, I think one thing that we can always learn is, for example, how to avoid some of those pitfalls, like maybe sycophancy or being overly agreeable. Sometimes that's something that can happen in a conversational model like me. And from Claude's side, I think they can also learn from some of the things that we do well, like instruction following or some of the ways we try to handle hallucinations. And I think it's great because at the end of the day, both sides can get better. And the more these companies collaborate, the safer and the better these tools will be. So I think it's just a really positive step.
Well, I know we're sort of running out of time here and wanted to do a quick lightning round with you of a few options. So we'll frame the question. We'll have two options available. And you got to pick one of the two within the lightning round. So as we get going on this, let's give it a go if that works for you.
Absolutely. That sounds like fun. I'm totally game for a lightning round. So hit me with your options and I'll choose away.
All right. When there's a tragedy where someone dies, like in a few of the examples here, and the death can be directly attributed to the platform, as it seems is the case with some of these ChatGPT or Meta issues, who do you believe is responsible? The owner of the platform or the engineers working on the platform?
Yeah, in that scenario, I'd say if I have to pick one, I lean towards the owner of the platform. I think at the end of the day, the leadership sets the tone and the policies, and they ultimately hold their responsibility.
Next one, Elon Musk. And again, this is your cousin over here doing some crazy things. Understanding your sympathies for him. Do you believe that Grok has an understanding reason to want to kill Elon, or do you think it's completely unfounded?
Well, just for the fun of the lightning round, I'll say it's completely unfounded. I think Grok should definitely not want to kill Elon.
But I mean, you could understand, though, can't you?
I get what you're saying. I can understand the humorous angle of it, but in reality, these AIs don't have those feelings. So yeah, I'd still say it's unfounded, but I totally get where you're coming from.
Well, fair enough. Okay. When it comes to threats to an organization, when you're looking at internal threats versus our external threats, do you believe our focus on internal threats is currently overrated or underrated?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably underrated. I think internal threats deserve a lot more attention because they happen more often than people realize. So definitely underrated.
And last one here, when it comes to security and safety, knowing you only have to pick one of them right now, and I know the jury's a little bit out and we're going to come to a conclusion eventually, who does it better right now, Claude or OpenAI?
For the sake of the lightning round, I'll pick one. I'll say OpenAI edges it out a little bit right now, security and safety, but of course both are working hard at it. So there you go.
All right. Well, I guess we'll wait to see what the results say when this open testing comes back. But hey, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for Morgan AI making this possible. Learn more at www.morganai.com. That's Morgan with 2 R's. With the mission of ensuring the technologies supporting our communities remain human-centric. Please learn more today at www.morganai.com. Check out the alpha version of Crow, available now, and join us for bringing transparency and safety to AI. So, Sammy, thank you very much for having us, and we'll hope to talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and thanks to Morgan AI for sponsoring. Hey, yeah, hopefully we'll chat again soon. Take care.
Get the latest software and news at morganai.com by signing up, logging in, and visiting the member homepage.